皆さんこんにちは。デジカエンジョイ部の秀吉です。
デジカ攻略部のコリです。
海外担当ジェイソンです。
よろしくお願いします。今回も前回に引き続きイングリッシュスペシャルエディションでお送りします。
今回はですね、英語版のカードを使ってルールの解説をしていきたいと思います。
はい、早速やってみましょう。
Okay, to start things off, let's look at the different card types in the Digimon card game. In total, there are 4 different types of cards that you'll run into. First up, we've got Digimon cards, which they're pretty much what the whole game revolves around when you get right down to it. The second type are Tamer cards. These provide all kinds of support effects for your game plan. Very important. Up next are option cards. These are one-time use cards that provide an effect and then go to your discard pile. And then finally, we've got Digi-Egg cards. Digi-Egg cards look a lot like Digimon cards, but they're very different in that they're basically there to serve as a starting point for digivolving your other cards onto. With that out of the way, Cody and Hideyoshi are going to get ready to start the game. In the Digimon card game, you play with 2 different kinds of decks. The first is the main deck, which has these cards here with blue backs. Main decks have exactly 50 cards in them. Next up is the Digi-Egg deck, which can have up to 5 cards, all with these white backs that you see here. Oh, and by the way, you can only include up to 4 of the same card between both decks. Next, let's take a look at the playing field. First up, we've got the deck area and trash. The deck area is where your main deck goes, the one with the blue card backs. The trash is basically your discard pile. Up next, we have the battle area and breeding area. The battle area is where your Digimon and Tamers go when you play them. The breeding area, meanwhile, is where your Digi-Egg cards go. Those are the cards we mentioned earlier with the white backs. So go ahead and place your Digi-Egg deck right here. Next up is the security stack. Take 5 cards from the top of your deck and place them here. Hideyoshi and Cody are going to go ahead and shuffle up and place the top 5 cards of their decks here face down. And you should place the cards one by one, just like you see here. Every time a player attacks their opponent with one of their Digimon, they remove 1 or more cards in their security stack. Once your opponent's security stack is empty, you attack them 1 more time to win the game. Finally, let's talk about this game's big defining feature, the memory gauge. This is a system that's new to collectible card games. A shared cost system that tracks the resources you and your opponent use to pay for cards. We'll go into more detail on this as we go along, but for now, it looks like Cody and Hideyoshi are ready to play. So they're going to play a game of rock, paper, scissors to decide who goes first. Hideyoshi won, so he goes first. Cody lost, so he goes second. The player who wins always goes first, and you don't have to use rock, paper, scissors. You can roll a die, flip a coin, whatever you like. Hideyoshi now begins his first turn, which consists of 4 phases. Those are the unsuspend phase, the draw phase, the breeding phase, and the main phase. We'll explain the unsuspend phase later, but since Hideyoshi is going first, he skips his draw phase and goes straight to the breeding phase. He'll get his draw phase back in future turns. Now, you might be asking yourself, what can you do during the breeding phase? One of 3 things. You can hatch a Digi-Egg, you can move a Digimon from your breeding area to your battle area, or you can do nothing. To start, Hideyoshi doesn't have a Digimon in his breeding area, so he hatches one from his Digi-Egg deck. Just go ahead and flip over the top card of your Digi-Egg deck, and kaboom! Hideyoshi has hatched himself a Koromon. And with that, the breeding phase is over. Next up is the main phase. There are 6 actions you can take during the main phase. You can play a Digimon, digivolve a Digimon, attack, play a tamer, use an option card, or pass. These are your 6 options during the main phase. Now, you might be wondering, what order can I do these in? And as a matter of fact, you can take these actions in any order you like. There's just one catch. As soon as your memory counter goes past 1 on your opponent's side of the memory gauge, your turn ends. So keep this in mind to make sure you don't accidentally give the turn to your opponent before you can actually make your attack. So here's a question. Hideyoshi wants to play this Agumon. What should he do? So something to keep in mind here is you can either play Digimon cards or digivolve into them. Both require you to pay a memory cost, but take a look at the upper left corner of the card. The topmost number here is the play cost, while the lower one is the digivolve cost. When you digivolve into a Digimon, you only pay the digivolve cost. There is something you have to keep in mind, though, when you're doing this. You can only digivolve onto a card that matches the color of the digivolve cost. In this case, Agumon is red, so you can't digivolve it onto a blue Digimon. Also important is the Digimon's level. You can only raise a Digimon's level 1 at a time. So hate to say it, but there's no way to go from a level 2 Digimon to a level 5. No warp digivolving here, I'm afraid. Or at least, not yet. One more thing, this is something to always remember when digivolving. When you digivolve, you draw a card. Always, always, always. Fundamentally, if you're going to play a Digimon to the battle area, you always want to digivolve them into play if possible. With that in mind, Hideyoshi is going to digivolve into his Agumon. When placing Digimon cards on top of each other, place the cards so that the text on the bottom of the cards beneath it are visible. And since Hideyoshi just digivolved, he draws 1 card, just like that. Next, Koromon has an inherited effect, but we haven't quite met its activation requirements just yet. We'll revisit this when the time comes, but for now, you don't have to worry about it. So just to recap, digivolving lets you play expensive Digimon for cheap, draws you a card, and activates all kinds of effects. It's super handy, so always try to digivolve whenever possible. Now, Hideyoshi's Agumon still has room to digivolve. Is he allowed to? He sure is. The memory counter isn't on his opponent's side of the memory gauge, so it's still his turn, and he can still digivolve. And he will. Hideyoshi goes ahead and digivolves his Agumon into Birdramon. Birdramon has a digivolve cost of 2, so he moves his memory counter 2 spaces. And since he digivolved, he draws 1 card. Very easy to forget, oh so important. Don't forget. His memory counter has now moved past 1 on his opponent's side, so Hideyoshi's turn is over. Now, Cody's turn starts, and since he went second, he gets to draw 1 card during his draw phase. He then hatches a Digi-Egg during his breeding phase, and he then moves on to his main phase, but Cody doesn't have a level 3 Digimon in his hand, so he can't digivolve. Instead, he's going to play the level 4 Grizzlymon from his hand. Now, Grizzlymon's a little bit pricey with a play cost of 5. There's an important rule to remember when playing Digimon, which is you can't attack with Digimon the same turn you play them. If you digivolve onto a Digimon that entered play the previous turn, however, you can attack with it. Okay, the memory counter has passed 1 on Hideyoshi's side, so Cody's turn is over. Hideyoshi begins his turn. From his second turn onwards, he gets his draw step, so he draws 1 card. He then moves on to the breeding phase. This time, he has a Digimon in his breeding area, so he can't hatch a Digi-Egg. You can only have 1 Digimon in your breeding area at a time. As such, he can either move the Digimon in his breeding area to the battle area, or do nothing. You might be asking, is there a merit to do nothing here? Well, Digimon in your breeding area can't attack, but on the other hand, your opponent can't do anything to them either. So this can be a good and safe way to Digivolve without your opponent throwing a wrench in your plans. Hideyoshi chooses to move Birdramon to his battle area. Once he does so, it becomes his main phase. He still has memory to spend, so he Digivolves Birdramon into the mighty level 5 Garudamon. This has a Digivolve cost of 3, so he moves his memory counter 3 spaces and draws a card off the Digivolve. Garudamon has an effect that reads, when Digivolving. Does it activate now, you're probably wondering. Well, let's take a look at the effect itself. It reads, when Digivolving, one of your Digimon gets plus 3000 DP for the turn. Garudamon's effect activates when Digivolving, so we can use it right now to give Garudamon plus 3000 DP. That means Garudamon's 7000 DP will have 3000 DP added to it, for a total of 10,000. On top of that, the Agumon we Digivolved from has an inherited effect that gives plus 1000 DP, which, when combined with Garudamon's plus 3000 DP, gives Garudamon a total of 11,000 DP. This is one Digimon you do not want to mess with. Now, with that much power built up, Hideyoshi is itching to attack. Let's try attacking with Garudamon. When attacking with Digimon, you turn the topmost Digimon sideways, like this. There we go, just like that. This is going to be an attack on Cody's security, so Hideyoshi performs a security check. The security check is performed on the topmost card of the security stack. And we flipped a Digimon. When a Digimon card is flipped over from a security stack, it becomes a security Digimon. Security Digimon battle against the attacking Digimon by comparing DP. If the security Digimon has more DP than the attacking Digimon is deleted. That said, even if a security Digimon wins the battle, it still goes to the trash. Garudamon has 11,000 DP to Ikakumon's 5,000, so Ikakumon loses the battle and goes to Cody's trash. Garudamon's attack ends, but it's still Hideyoshi's turn. He's free to continue Digivolving and playing cards. If Hideyoshi wants to Digivolve into this War Greymon, what position should he play it in? Garudamon is currently turned sideways. Return it to its original upright and vertical position, then play War Greymon on top of it, turned sideways. There we go. Alright, Hideyoshi then pays the Digivolve cost and, of course, draws a card for Digivolving. The Digivolve cost is 4, so he moves the memory counter 4 spaces and draws a card. The memory counter is now on Cody's side, so Hideyoshi's turn is over. We're back to the breeding phase. Something to note here. Cody has a level 2 Digimon in his breeding area. You can't move level 2 Digimon from the breeding area to the battle area. You need to Digivolve a level 2 at least once to get it to level 3 or above first. That means Cody unfortunately can't do anything right now, so we move to his main phase. Cody Digivolves Sunomon into the level 3 Gomamon and draws a card for Digivolving. Then, he Digivolves Gomamon into the level 4 Ikakumon, pays 2 memory as part of the Digivolve cost, and draws a card. Finally, he Digivolves Ikakumon into the level 5 Were Garurumon, pays 3 memory, and draws a card. Phew! The memory counter is on Hideyoshi's side now, so the turn is over. It's now Hideyoshi's turn, but this time we have to talk about the unsuspend phase. Hideyoshi's War Greymon is turned sideways from the attack. Cards that are turned sideways like this are referred to as being suspended. Cody's Grizzlymon, on the other hand, is placed vertically, or unsuspended. During the unsuspend phase, all suspended cards are unsuspended or rotated back to their original positions. When suspended Digimon are attacked, they compare DP with the attacker. The Digimon with less DP is deleted, but in the event of a tie, both Digimon are deleted. Okay, it's Hideyoshi's draw phase, so he draws a card. Next up is the breeding phase, and his breeding area is empty, so he decides to hatch a Digi-Egg. Now we're on to the main phase. Hideyoshi doesn't have a lot of memory to work with, so he decides to attack first. He suspends War Greymon to make a security attack. War Greymon's effect is extremely powerful, so let's camp out here for a bit. It reads, your turn. For every 2 Digivolution cards this Digimon has, it gains security attack +1. This Digimon checks 1 additional security card. So that sounds like a game changer, but how does it work exactly? Digimon can increase or decrease their security attacks via effects and inherited effects. In this case, War Greymon has 4 Digivolution cards beneath it, which means it gets 2 extra security attacks. It already has 1, so that equals 3 cards in the opponent's security that it gets to check. This is something that Cody absolutely doesn't want to have happen, so he's going to attempt to block the attack. Some Digimon have the blocker effect. In this case, Cody's Grizzlymon has it. A Digimon with blocker can suspend itself to take a hit for either you or one of your other Digimon. When it does, it fights the attacking Digimon by comparing DP. How much DP does War Greymon have right now? War Greymon has 14,000 DP, while Grizzlymon has 6,000. Grizzlymon has less DP, so it loses the battle and gets deleted. Hideyoshi still has memory left over, so he's going to try to keep up the pressure. He digivolves Koromon into Biomon for 0 memory and draws a card. Then he plays Greymon straight to the battle area without digivolving. This costs 5 memory, so Hideyoshi's turn is over. It's now Cody's turn. He draws a card during the draw phase. During his breeding phase, he moves the Digimon in his breeding area to his battle area. Now for his main phase. He digivolves Were Garurumon into Metal Garurumon, moving his memory counter 4 spaces and drawing a card. He then uses Metal Garurumon to attack Hideyoshi's security stack. Where Garurumon's inherited effect reads, quote, while your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution cards, this Digimon gains security attack +1. Greymon is in play on Hideyoshi's side of the field, so this effect kicks in, granting an extra security attack to Metal Garurumon. On top of that, Metal Garurumon has an effect it can use once per turn that unsuspends it after attacking. Cody attacks with Metal Garurumon, of course, so let's check some security cards. The first card flipped over is Dracomon. It only has 4,000 DP, so it loses the battle and goes to Hideyoshi's trash. The second card flipped over is another Dracomon, which also goes to the trash. Okay, now Metal Garurumon unsuspends itself with its effect and makes another attack, where Garurumon's effect is still active, so Cody gets to check another 2 security cards. Alright, we flip over the first card, and what's this? So Cody flipped over a card with a security effect. You might have noticed the lock icons on the bottom of certain option cards. The effects next to these locks activate when flipped over from the security stack. We flipped over Gaia Force, so let's go ahead and read the security effect on it. It reads, Security, activate this card's main effect. The main effect is printed up above and reads, delete one of your opponent's Digimon. So we know what that means. Metal Garurumon is getting deleted. You never know what might happen during a security check. Security effects are free, so never give up. In any case, let's say goodbye to Metal Garurumon. And this card over here goes to the trash too. Metal Garurumon was deleted by Gaia Force's effect. Even though Metal Garurumon had 2 security attacks lined up from Were Garurumon's effect, it got deleted, so its attack and any associated security checks end here. Keep this in mind. Anytime an attacking card is deleted or returned to hand, the attack ends immediately. Cody's battle area is now empty, so he plays Matt Ishida, a 2-cost Tamer card. You can play as many Tamer cards as you like in your battle area, and their effects stack. Matt Ishida's effect reads, start of your turn. If your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution cards, gain 1 memory. This effect will kick in at the start of Cody's next turn, but for now, he's spent enough memory to pass the turn back to Hideyoshi. Hideyoshi kicks off his turn and gets ready to rumble. He unsuspends War Greymon during his unsuspend phase, then he draws a card during his draw phase. During his breeding phase, he decides to move Biyomon into the battle area. We're now in the main phase, and there's a lot to consider here, but for now, Hideyoshi attacks with Greymon. Time for the security check. Zudomon. It has 7,000 DP, so Greymon is toast and goes to the trash. Hideyoshi contemplates what to do next, but decides to stay on the offensive, attacking Cody's security stack with War Greymon. How many security cards does he get to check this time? Hideyoshi's War Greymon has 4 Digivolution cards, so it gets 2 extra security checks from its effect, for 3 total. Once again, when making multiple security checks, flip each card 1 at a time. First up is Plesiomon. It has 12,000 DP. War Greymon's inherited effects pump it up to 14,000 DP, giving it a close victory over the plucky Plesiosaur. Plesiomon goes to the trash. Next up is Cocytus Breath. This card has a security effect. It reads, Security, activate this card's main effect. The main effect allows Cody to return one of Hideyoshi's Digimon to his hand, trashing all the Digivolution cards of that Digimon. War Greymon goes back to Hideyoshi's hand, and all of its Digivolution cards go to the trash. It's downright tragic when you think about it. War Greymon has 3 security checks lined up, but since it left the battle area, its attack comes to a halt. Hideyoshi still has memory left, so he decides to make one more security attack with Biyomon. Security check, go. Metal Garurumon comes out with 11,000 DP. Biyomon's not winning this fight. Both cards go to the trash. Hideyoshi's out of Digimon, so he plays Agumon to the battle area for 3 memory. The memory gauge is back on Cody's side, so it's now his turn. At the start of Cody's turn, Matt Ishida's effect kicks in. This effect gives him +1 memory at the start of his turn, as long as his opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution cards. That +1 puts him up to 2 total memory. He draws a card during his draw phase and hatches a Digi-Egg during his breeding phase. In his main phase, he plays a level 3 Gabumon, which costs 3 memory. This puts the memory counter back at 1, making it Hideyoshi's turn again. Hideyoshi has nothing to unsuspend, so he goes straight to the draw phase. During the breeding phase, he hatches a Digi-Egg. Time for the main phase. Cody is out of security cards, so Hideyoshi makes an attack. Cody has no blockers, so Hideyoshi attacks him directly and wins the game. A big round of applause, everyone. One last thing before we go. We didn't see anyone use it this game, but you can actually pass the turn to your opponent during your main phase. If you do, your turn ends and the memory counter moves to 3 on your opponent's side. Hypothetically, if Hideyoshi passed his turn, this is how the memory gauge would have looked when all was said and done. You'll typically want to pass the turn when you're out of cards, or when there are cards you want to save for just the right moment. A next level strategy, if you will. So, what did you think?
はい、今回英語版だったんですけども、いかがでしたか？
そうですね、まあメモリーゲージのシステムなのとても新鮮なので、やっぱり海外のプレイヤーにも本当に楽しんでいただけると思います。
はい、これでね、世界中のプレイヤーがデジカで楽しんでいただけますからね。 でも見てたらなんかスタートデッキだけじゃ物足りないですね。他のカードも見てみたいですね。
ね、
はい
じゃあ次回は私がやっぱりブースターのカードを使って
は
デッキを作りますね。
それは楽しみですね。では次回はですね対戦動画をお見せできるという形なので、次回の動画もぜひ見てくださいね。それではバイバイ。